us in that way for right now.
We're okay to begin.
What's that?
We're okay.
Okay, ready to go. Okay, thank you so much. Good morning. My name is Jim Kaderis. I'm Chair of the Governor State University's HR Committee. I hereby call the Monday, October 11th, 2021 meeting of the GSU Board of Trustees Human Resources Committee to order. Penny, will you please call the roll?
Trustee Ceballos Kendall.
Here.
Trustee Harrell. Trustee Harrell. Trustee Kaderis.
Here. All right, thank you. We do have a quorum for today's meeting. I would like to thank Ali Chapra, who just completed her service as a Faculty Senate representative to this committee. Chelsea Vanderpool will remain with us, and we welcome Ahmad Khan. Thank you so much. Pleasure being here, newly appointed Faculty Senate rep to the HR Committee. Good morning. Thank you. All right, first on our agenda today, as usual, is public comment, consistent with Public Act 91-0715 and reasonable constraints determined by the Board of Trustees. At each regular or special meeting of the board or its committees that is open to the public, members of the public may request a brief time on the approved agenda of the meeting to address the board on relevant matters within its jurisdiction. A reminder that commenters will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Are there any requests for public comment today? Online, do we have any speakers who are requesting a couple minutes? Nope, you say no, okay. In that case, thank you, we shall move on. Okay, committee members, you have the meeting agenda before you. May I have a motion to approve today's meeting agenda?
So move.
May I have a second? I will second it myself. Any discussion? Hearing none. Penny, please call the roll.
Trustee Ceballos Kendall.
Yes.
Trustee Harrell. Trustee Kaderis.
Yes. Do you know if Trustee Harrell is on? She's not able to.
I heard she was on, but I'm checking.
Point of order, Chair Kaderis. We want to make sure that she has a live line that she can participate in because the other observers are just being live streamed.
Yeah, no, she does.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
they looked that up.
Okay, next, we will now turn to the approval of minutes. May I have a motion to approve the open session minutes of the April 21st, 2021 HR Committee meeting?
I move.
Is there a second? I will second it. Any discussion? Penny, please call the roll.
Trustee Ceballos Kendall.
Yes.
Trustee Harrell. Trustee Kaderis.
Aye. Okay, next, may I have a motion to approve the executive session minutes of the April 21st, 2021 committee meeting and to keep the minutes closed pursuant to the recommendation of council?
I move.
Is there a second? I will second it. Penny, please call the roll.
Trustee Ceballos Kendall.
Yes.
Trustee Kaderis.
Aye. Motion approved,
I
motion
can't hear
passed.
Penny. I don't know if I'm going to talk, but I,
Oh, thank you. We can't hear you now. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Okay, so the Human Resources Committee executive session minutes for the April 21st, 2021 meeting has been approved, but will remain closed. Okay, next, may I have a motion to approve the executive session minutes of the February 7th, 2020 HR Committee meeting and to keep the minutes closed pursuant to recommendation of council?
I move.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? Penny, please call the roll.
Trustee Ceballos Kendall.
Yes.
Trustee Harrell.
Yes.
Trustee Kaderis.
Aye. Okay, now we go to informational items. We have a couple informational items for today. The first is an update on key open positions. Councilor Therese King Noos, will you please present the update?
Thank you, Chair Kaderis. Good morning, trustees, President Green, faculty, and my colleagues, as well as any students who are here. An update on our hiring of key positions for the university. The longest outstanding position is for our AVP of Human Resources. After a dedicated search chaired by Board Liaison Penny Purdue, we have made an offer to Josh Allen, who will start next Monday on October 18th. Josh comes to us with over 20 years of experience in human resources and from the University of Missouri. Second on our list of updates is to fill the position from Dr. Paul Bilaska, who was our Vice President for Administration and Financial Affairs. I want to formally welcome Dr. Corey Bradford, who's with us this morning.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Bradford comes to us with over 20 years in higher education, 25 years in higher education, including 20 at one of our sister institutions, Southern Illinois University. Dr. Bradford came to us after a long and complex search chaired by Dean Jun Zhao. Today is his first day with us. Dr. Bilaska has graciously agreed to stay until the end of the week to ensure an orderly transition. And so we are grateful to Dr. Bilaska for his continued service to the university. Third on our list, our Vice President for Academic Affairs and Provost, Beth Kada, retired after lengthy service to the university effective September 30th. And in her place on an interim basis, I also want to welcome to our table Dr. Colleen Sexton. Dr. Sexton has served the university with distinction since 2004. She became a full professor of science education with our university in 2008. Her leadership responsibilities include curriculum development, national accreditation, program assessment, and technology integration. At the request of Dr. Green, she has agreed to serve as our interim vice president for academic affairs and provost until a successor is found. Thank you, Dr. Sexton. And an update on our search for the successor for Dr. Kada, we had an extremely robust applicant pool of over 60 applicants, qualified applicants from all over the country. And we have now narrowed it down under the leadership of Dr. Sexton, she's chairing that committee as well, to 3 highly qualified applicants who will be visiting the campus on October 14th, 19th, and 21st. Dr. Sexton has issued a save the date to the university so that you will be aware of when they will be presenting to the campus, and all are invited to both attend the presentation as well as provide input on the candidates. And if I could beg the chair's indulgence, I just wanted to give one more update because I'm so proud of our Human Resources Department. We have had 3 of our colleagues from Human Resources accepted to the university's doctoral program in educational leadership, including Marquita Alexander, Jose de la Paz, and Sandra Merrick. And so while we are welcoming new people, we are continuing to sharpen the saw with our existing people. And that was such a tremendous development for our HR department. I wanted to share it with the board. So well done to those 3.
Well said. Absolutely.
Are there any questions on our searches?
I just want to congratulate you in a fantastic job
Oh, thank
you've
you.
been doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. I hear no questions. Next item is another information item, is a report of board governing documents relating to human services. Ms. King, no host, please present this item.
Thank you. There was a memo in the board book about the status of this item. I can go over it in a little detail if you'd like.
Please.
So at the request of the Governance and Nominations Committee, when I started last November, the board requested that we develop a more ritualized way of going through the board documents to make sure that they are updated and complete. And so one of our first orders of business was to look at the bylaws at a high level, but we also examined all of the board documents, including regulations and policies. And in February, I presented a recommendation to the board, which the board accepted, to begin a review of all regulations and policies on a 3-year cycle on a rolling basis. The first up was the Human Resources Committee and policies and regulations related to human resources. And so following those recommendations made in February, we have focused on presenting 4 policies and/or regulations to this committee this morning, which appear on the agenda as proposed action items. So I just wanted to put in some context the reason why you're getting these 4 action items as part of a broader effort to make sure that all of the policies and procedures and board documents are up to date. And remind the board and our constituents that the way all of these are passed, both the policies and the regulations, is that they are presented at a board meeting. So if the committee decides today to go forward, anything it decides to go forward with will be presented at the board meeting on October 29th, not for approval, simply for posting for open comment. So we don't need to discuss the merits of any particular item today. We will have until the next board meeting, those policies and procedures will be posted for public comment. Anyone in the university or outside the university is welcome and encouraged to submit written comments, which will be considered before we take these back to the committee in December and the full board in December. And we may make adjustments and pursuant to those suggestions. So
Okay, so the comments coming in will be screened by you and compiled and ready for further consideration. Because we will have one more committee meeting before the December board meeting of the whole anyway, so have a chance at least to kick the tires and check it out by then. Okay, thank you.
exactly. So if there are no questions about the general status, that concludes my report. Other than to say, the 4 that we picked today were high priority issues for reasons described in the executive summaries for each. But this is not the end of the road by any measure. We will continue to bring additional ones in front of the committee as
That's
the
gonna be
year
my
goes
next
on.
question. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the trustees?
No.
Like comment, simply thank
Can hear you a little bit. You broke up.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just saying thank you for your work. I know we've got a lot of work to go through here, but it's exciting to see some proactive work being done to set us up in future boards. So thank you for your work.
Thank you, Chair Hurl.
Thank you, trustee Harrell.
Thank you.
Okay, any others? So the next item is we're moving up to some action items for this meeting this morning. So we have 6 action items today for consideration and possible recommendation to the full board. The first is a consideration and possible recommendation to approve an increase to a contract with a law firm of Lanner Muchin Limited for legal services on an as-needed basis. May I have a motion?
So move.
May I have a second?
I second.
All right, thank you so much. Chair, Ms. King-Noos, will you please present the resolution?
Thank you, Chair Kaderis. This motion or this proposed resolution is to permit the university to continue using Lanner Muchin, which is the outside law firm who provides most of our employment and labor advice, even if the total services exceed the current cap of $300,000. So that cap was set 3 years ago as part of a contracting process. We are close to butting up against it, and I don't think that we will actually exceed it before June 30th of 2022, but in the event that we do, I would like to create some latitude there to exceed it if we needed to. And things that would cause us to exceed it might include unanticipated projects, like if we needed specific guidance on some of the policies that we are passing. One of the reasons that it is bumping up close to the 300 is that this year we use them very proactively to conduct a full audit of all policies and procedures in the Human Resources Department. They interviewed all personnel within the Human Resources Department to identify duties and responsibilities, as well as areas of overlap and areas that could have been improved. And so that was a large undertaking, but I thought it was a good use of those dollars. And so that is something that was not anticipated 3 years ago. That's something that's pushing us against that $300,000 limit. And again, I don't think we'll be passing it, but in the event that we do, I just wanted to ask permission first rather than forgiveness later if we go over the 300.
Understood. Now, all these additional services and efforts they've been given have been under your guidance and your office's guidance and direction, and the reporting back we're getting results back from the efforts and everything?
Yes, so the audit results, including an index of all the written materials they produced for us, are included as an exhibit to Dr. Green's annual report. And you see some of that work product before you today with the accommodations regulation. They were the primary draftsperson of that document.
Okay, understood. Thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee members?
Yeah, just a point of information for my ignorance. Is this firm located in Chicago, or they are here in the suburbs, or where are they based?
Their primary office is in downtown Chicago. Our primary relationship partner is an attorney named Mark Bennett, very well known throughout the area, and a very, very accomplished labor negotiator. So he represents not only us, but several of our sister institutions on UPI matters. And so in addition to providing legal advice, he's often able to just provide very pragmatic, practical direction on how to deal well with our union constituents. And I think as a result of that, you're seeing very, very, very positive relationships with the union. And that's really important as we go into union negotiations this fall for a new collective bargaining agreement.
Thank you.
Chair Harrell, I heard you say something. Maybe not. All right, okay, so the question on the floor is,
I apologize, Jim, I went out for a second. I just have one other question. Well, it's actually a two-parter. Excuse me. The firm that we use, is there a cycle that we come up where we have open bidding for this relationship with our attorney, or is this something that we, I don't want to say no bid, but I don't know if it's had this. When's the last time we looked at the firm, just just from a process standpoint, just for me that we have the right firm for this time and going forward?
Chair Harrell, would you mind if I deferred that question to Tracy Sullivan, who's here in the room for us? She's, as we know, our resident expert on all procurement issues, so I don't want to misspeak.
Yeah, thank you.
Good morning. Yes, Chair Harrell, there is a 3-year contract that ends June 30th, and then we have the option to do a new RFP for those services. But since we did the last award, IPEC, which is the Illinois Public Hire, has awards with several different firms that the university currently uses. So it'll be up to Ms. Nohost to determine if we're going to utilize those or issue a new RFP for your consideration in the spring.
All right, and that's actually, again, just a little bit of my ignorance. I don't know how that process works, so thank you very much. So it would either be in open to the firms that we already have, or we would open it up to RFP. And I have no issues with the firm we're using right now. I just want to ask that from a process standpoint. Thank you for that. My second question is just on the need for additional funding. Do you see this going into 2022, or is it the largest, heaviest lift from our project? Is that done, or what might we be looking at additional funds being requested as we go into 2022?
I think the heavy lifting was done prior to June 30th, 21. And I just wanted to build a little bit of a reserve there in case something that I can't anticipate now comes up. But we have a full audit. We have drafts of all policies, so I think the drafting is done. But if a new regulation were to come down in the morning, for example, dealing with Title VII employment issues, we'd probably turn to them, and depending on how much heavy lifting was required, that's where that $50,000 would come into play.
Thank you. And then the last question on the same topic is, can you just differentiate for me the difference between what we utilize this firm for and then Mary Pat's firm? Because I know we're engaging them as well, or making sure that they're still engaged or not.
Sure. So we generally outline in the engagement letters the purposes for the service. And in Lehner Muchen's example, they provide general employment advice. So if an employee comes to us and asks for an accommodation that's a little bit out of the norm, and we want to make sure that we're buttoned up, we would call them and say, have you seen this before? How are the other institutions treating this? So they answer general employment questions. They answer and advise on all matter of labor issues. So again, when we go to the table with UPI, when a member raises a grievance, they handle that. When we have a grievance with a member and there needs to be disciplinary action, they advise on those issues. So that is their bread and butter, is labor and employment advice. The difference between what we use them for and Mary Pat Byrne's firm for is Mary Pat Byrne this past year was our advisor as bond issuer for the bond issuance that we did when we refinanced our debt. That is not within the subject matter expertise of Lehner Mutual. And so while I would normally encourage a client to consolidate services into one firm for cost savings purposes, that consolidation wasn't available here because Lehner Mutual simply doesn't do bond refinance. That's a pretty niche area. And we thought it best for the board to be represented by someone very experienced in that area. So we referred that to Mary Pat. Mary Pat continues also to, and her colleagues, Sarah Bakeman, continue to advise us on board governance issues, including sort of esoteric issues that might come up around the Open Meetings Act. If it's really an odd question, we'll call them and ask them for those, again, rules of thumb, what are other institutions doing? So that's sort of the delineation, is that one is a labor and employment firm, one is a governance firm that also happens to have an expertise in bond issuance. So they served that function for us as well.
Excellent. Okay, thank you for that clarity. No more questions. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to add one comment. So depending on the direction this committee gives in the full board later on, if there is the possibility, it looks like we're going to run into this little buffer area, just please keep this committee advised so we know what's going on, why it's going on. So I appreciate that.
Will do.
Okay. So the question on the floor is the recommendation to the board of the adoption of the resolution to approve an increase to the contract with Lehner Mutual. Penny, please call the roll.
Pedro Ceballos Candace,
Yes.
Pedro Harrell, Trustee Harrell,
Yes.
Trustee Caderas.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the resolution has been approved for recommendation to the full Board of Trustees at the October meeting. Okay, our next action item is a consideration and possible recommendation to the board to approve amendments to Article 2, Sections 2 and 3A, 4 through 5, and the addition of Article 7 to the board policies. May I have a motion?
I move.
May I have a second?
I second.
Ms. Caitlin Wild and Mr. Carl Hampton, will you please present the resolution? No fighting over who goes first.
So the proposed, So the proposed resolution here is to get the process rolling on amending the board policies. So as General Counsel Nohos mentioned earlier, this is a first presentation to this committee that then gets presented for the first time to the board for a first reading. And the first time this could be actually adopted would be in the next cycle of board committee meetings and meetings in December. And this is also the first amendment to the board documents with respect to non-discrimination and accommodation. With respect to this recommendation is to update the policies. There is already certain language in the policies with respect to non-discrimination. However, it is outdated. For example, it talks about Vietnam veterans as opposed to just general non-discrimination on military or veteran status. So language needs to be updated. We also need, is our recommendation to this committee and the board, is a complete new section that is a flat out, no leaving no room for questions. This is GSU's policy. We don't tolerate discrimination or harassment for any reason. So that is the complete section you will see in the red line included in your board packet.
That concludes your update.
Yes, unless there are any questions.
And quickly, just want to say, this is notice to the board, as Caitlin has said, and bottom line is it updates these provisions, these policies to make sure that we are having diversity, equity, inclusion on this campus and fosters that through the policies. And it makes sense to have it at the board level as part of our board governance than going through the campus process.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarification. Any questions or comments from the committee members?
I do have a question. I don't want to create extra work for you or anything like that, but it would be useful if you had like a table, like what you were talking about. You talk about the veterans and they say the old language, say just Vietnam, the new language covers everybody, all the changes, the critical changes that you are making so we can review it, or to clearly mark the stuff that is being deleted and the stuff that's being added. So somehow that is kind of a.
You want something more than what the red line and the notes we have
It would be
already?
like a little summary, the changes. Is that possible or is it?
I think that we can make the executive summary more complete. We provided examples in the executive summary, but we can list every change. And we also provided a red line, but we can,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, we can put those in the executive summary.
We can do that before the next board, before the
Yeah.
next board meeting, so.
Okay.
But we wanted to, again, have it simple and notice, and then we can expand on that, expound on that in the future.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments? Chair Harrell, anything? Sorry. All right, hearing none. Any other questions? So question on the floor is the recommendation to the board to adopt a resolution to approve amendments to Article 2, Sections 2 and 3A, 4 through 5, in the addition of Article 7 to the board policies. Penny, please call the roll.
Trustee Cevallos Kendall,
Yes.
trustee Harrell,
Yes.
trustee Cadaris,
Yes. Okay, the resolution has been approved for recommendation to the full board. Okay, next is the consideration and possible recommendation to the board to approve an amendment to Section 2A of the board regulations to include an anti-discrimination, harassment, and retaliation regulation. May I have a motion?
So move.
I make a motion.
The chair made the motion.
So.
I second.
All right.
I second.
All right. Ms. Wild, Mr. Hampton, we please present this resolution.
So this is the first of our recommendations to this committee and then the board to change the regulations of the board. In this case, it is to adopt into the regulations what is now the topic of academic policy 52. And by academic policy, I mean not board policy, but the policies that have been put forward through the schools process.
Okay.
So this would be a formal adoption by the board of this subject. Specifically, this resolution deals with the general concept of anti-discrimination and harassment policy, as opposed to the next one, which is specifically based on the law of Title IX under federal law, which is sex-based discrimination. This one would cover sex discrimination that doesn't fall under Title IX, as well as discrimination based on any other protected category, such as gender, race, military status, family status. And also, with respect to this policy 52, the idea is to not only make it part of the regulations, but also to make the policy more flexible with respect to the policies and procedures for reviewing complaints filed under the policy. Right now, policy 52 is very rigid, and the language that we are proposing for this subject area, as found in the appendix to your board book, specifically starting on page 71, anticipates multiple options for reviewing and processing complaints that we believe are for the best interests of the entire university, both the complainants themselves, as well as the university respondents to complaints, as it allows for flexibility.
Okay, I'm scanning through the text there and stuff, so I see it, yeah, I see the pretty significant section being added to it, okay?
And to conclude, we believe that this should be at the board level to provide guidance for the whole university in this purview in the board, at the board, to make sure this policy is revised and implemented appropriately, Chair.
Concur, thank you very much. Okay, so the question on the floor is a recommendation to the board to adopt an amendment to section 2A of the board regulations to include an anti-discrimination, harassment, and retaliation regulation. Penny, please call the roll.
I'm sorry, do we have discussion first?
Are there any questions or comments from the committee members?
Thank you, I'm sorry, I just actually
No,
do have
no, it's
one.
not.
And just the clarification, because I'm just not sure. This was broad-based to the university, and I thought Human Resources Committee just dealt with policies that had to do with our employees. And maybe I'm mistaken about that. It seemed like this was a broader brush that has to do with how the university, their students and staff and everything else. Can you just help me understand, am I correct in that? And then does it belong here, or is it a governance thing, or is it just, give me a little bit, academic affairs? Just tell me about that.
That's a great question, Chair Harrell. Thank you for that. You're right, this policy is drafted more broadly than to exclusively deal with the university's employees. It also deals with complaints by or against students. My legal opinion is it does all belong before the Human Resources Committee, because the Human Resources Committee is charged not just with dealing with human resources issues, but compliance for the university generally. And so since we're required to have an anti-discrimination policy and we're required to have a Title IX policy, I do think it logically falls here. But for the sake of user friendliness, we may want to consider, and I think this is something that Interim Provost Sexton should weigh in on, whether we leave these policies where they are on the academic page, as long as they comport with what the board is saying, so that we don't upend decades of a user experience and make it difficult for students to find. Because the last thing we want to do is make it hard for students to find these policies.
Right, yeah, thank you for that.
So,
With having said that, then we are continue to vote on this as, it's gonna be put into motion through the Human Resources Committee, but it may simply be a matter of where it is presented and accessible to students as well.
Correct.
Is
And
that
I
what-
and I
what I'm hearing?
anticipate that our Chief Diversity Officer, Hampton, will be building out a more robust webpage in the coming year, and that we will have whatever we call them, Policy 52 or Regulation X, Y, or Z. I anticipate that they will be front and center on the Chief Diversity Officer's webpage for student accessibility.
Yes, Chair, well, I'm working with my colleague, Vice President Will Davis, and Tim Campos, as far as populating the website. And so we're working on that in concert with adopting these policies.
Colleen. So this is Colleen Sexton because I don't know if I'm on camera, but I do want to point out that our students and our faculty are used to the policy page, which these policies originated with the Faculty Senate Institutional Policy Committee, and then in in working through the compliance issues, you know, we want to make sure that it is as tight as possible. But I think it would be important that it stays on that policy committee, that page where students are used to and faculty are used to looking at these. And as with all of our policies, we always have them reviewed with that eye of compliance. So I think it just makes sense to stay there.
President Green, you want to add something?
I did, but I was trying not to belabor the meeting. So I just want to say that in our efforts to increase awareness around the policies that the universities should be guided by at the academic level, the student level, and at the board level, what I envision is a development of a system where you go one place for policies and you get a variety of choices. One of my issues is that no one should have to hunt to find policies. So even at the student portal, if there are board policies, academic policies, at the board level, there are policies for the whole university. No matter where you land, you should have a comprehensive list of the policies. And so that the user can identify what they're looking for, but they also see the complement that's available. And no one should have to know exactly where a policy is to find it. So that's my point.
I appreciate, thank you for that added comments. This begs a question in my mind, just, I see this is all driven towards employees at the university and what they shall be, you know, observing. What about the student's perspective? Is there anything in the student guide or student's handbook or something where they have some obligations to not harass, discriminate, something also? Where does that show up in our process?
So they're included in the policies, but the students do have a community standards book that is provided to all of them. As a matter of fact, it's sent out in August, and it's accessible on the webpage. So the community standards book actually details some of the policies that directly impact the students and points them to the specific language of the policy. So there's references in the community standards handbook and takes them to the policies page, which is easily found as govst.edu/policies. And it's divided into sections, or you can sort them by title or by number. And so there's direct links in the community standards book to the policy page.
Yes, as of right now, policy 52 as is, which we're talking about adopting into the regulations, is applicable to both students and employees. And the next policy about which we'll be talking, 78, is once again applicable to both students and employees. And those are published both on the website that Dr. Sexton just talked about, and also I know they're mentioned in the student handbook, so that.
Okay, I guess my concern is just making sure that the students are clear that these things are out there for them to be driven, you know, guided by them, as well as what the obligations are of the employees of the university.
They are, I know Dean of Students Williams also does educational campaigns related to that book as well. When it comes out, is it's been said. So I'm confident, again, my colleague Corey Williams is providing that.
So that gets regularly reviewed also?
Yes,
So-
they're part, Dean Williams, and we work
Yep.
together with Dean Williams on those issues. We work in community.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee members? Hearing none. The question on the floor still is a recommendation to the board to adopt an amendment to Section 2A of the board regulations to include an anti-discrimination, harassment, and retaliation regulation. Penny, please call the roll.
Trustee Survivors Kendall,
Yes.
trustee Harrell. Trustee Harrell. Trustee Kadar.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I went on mute, yes?
Thank you.
Okay, the resolution has been approved for recommendation to the full board.
They can be recognized.
All right, our action item number 4 is the consideration and possible recommendation to the board to approve an amendment to Section 2A of the board regulations to include a Title IX in anti-sex discrimination, harassment, and retaliation regulation. May I have a motion?
I move.
May I have a second?
I second.
All right, Ms. Wild, Mr. Hampton, still on board. Will you please present the resolution?
Thank you. So the thinking behind this resolution is the same as behind the previous one. Under Title IX of federal law, having a general anti-discrimination and harassment policy isn't good enough. You also have to have a Title IX specific policy. So that is why academic policy 78 was adopted when the federal regulations under the Title IX law changed. And once again, we believe it is important to bring the important issue of sex discrimination and its prevention to the board level. So we are proposing moving or adopting the content of what is now Academic Policy 78 into Board Regulations Section 2. And in your board books, this follows right after the previous section in the appendix.
You happen to know what page you're on that refers to offhand?
Let's see, 70. This policy section starts at,
Executive summary starts at page 42, and the policy starts at page 45.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee members? Hearing none. Chair Harrell, any questions, comments? Nope, we're good, okay. All right, so the question on the floor after no questions or comments is adoption of recommendations to the board to approve an amendment to Section 2A of the board regulations to include a Title IX in anti-sex discrimination, harassment, and retaliation regulation. Penny, please call the roll.
Trustee Ceballos Kendall.
Yes.
Trustee Harrell.
Yes.
Trustee Kadaris.
Aye. All right, the resolution has been approved for recommendation to the full board. Okay, the next action item is a consideration and possible recommendation to the board to approve an amendment to Section 2A of the board regulations to include an accommodation for employees with disabilities and pregnancy regulation. May I have a motion to consider?
So move.
May I have a second?
Second.
All right, Ms. Wild, Mr. Hampton, please again, present this resolution.
thank you again. So this is once again in line with the concept of anti-discrimination. This resolution deals with a regulation that would be just for employees. And while the previous the regulation on anti-discrimination and harassment prevents discrimination against employees with disabilities, this resolution fills a hole in the current GSU policies with respect to guidance on how employees can go about requesting a reasonable accommodation, which is their right under the Americans with Disabilities Act, and as well as explaining the school's rights with respect to its ability to choose reasonable accommodations when presented with the request, as well as the general process.
Just to make sure we're compliant now with ADA, so that we, again, have no exposure, and we make sure that all of our employees, regardless of disability status, have access to our great institution, Governor State University.
Okay, thank you so much. Any questions or comments from the committee members?
No, not for me.
No.
I just have one. Is there, like my earlier question, is there a similar one in place for the students also, that the students cannot be discriminated against for these same reasons?
Yes, as we discussed with respect to, discrimination against students, the prevention of that, the policies that apply, as well as the students have their own procedure already in place with respect to requesting reasonable accommodations that's set forth in the student handbook, as well as on the website. There's a specific coordinator for students with respect to requesting reasonable accommodations.
Okay, good, thank you.
That coordinator is very experienced and, again, deals with the volume as well as education related to making sure that our students have access to education.
And my concern always is that they know they have access to this stuff. It's just, I mean, they know everything relies on their orientation and being aware of these things and stuff. So it just, in the back of my mind, always keep it
May
front
I
and center.
just jump in with something?
Please.
We have several suggested statements that faculty put on the end of every syllabus. So it's standard language. One is about the Title IX, one is about like our counseling services. We had extra information regarding COVID. There's one on academic honesty. So as another way to get this kind of information to the students, there's like just one page of required statements that appear on every syllabus.
Okay, good. Very helpful, thank you. Okay, so the question on the floor is the recommendation to the board to adopt an amendment to section 2A of the board regulations to include an accommodations for employees with disabilities and pregnancy regulation. Penny, please call the roll.
Trustee Survivors Kendall?
Yes.
Trustee Harrell?
Yes.
Trustee Cabarrus?
Aye. The resolution has been approved for recommendation to the full board. Thank you so much for your presentations. Okay, before we consider the last action item today, I will entertain a motion to go into closed session. For those in attendance, I anticipate that we will come out of the executive session in probably, I don't know, 6, 8 hours. We never know. Call it a half an hour, and we'll see where we go from there. Depends on how the spirit of the discussion goes. We'll see where it takes us. For those of you watching the live stream, it will close down when we move into closed session. You can click on the link, and the video will return when we return to open session. Now, may I have a motion to go into closed session pursuant to Action 2C1 of the Open Meetings Act to discuss personnel matters?
I make a motion to go into closed session?
May I have a second?
Second.
Penny, please call the roll.
Trustee Survivors Kendall?
Yes.
Trustee Harrell?
Yes.
Trustee Cabarrus?
Yes. Well, thank you. We will now clear the room and stop the live stream so that the committee can move into executive session. Thank you for your attendance. IT, please let us know when session's been closed. Please confirm.
Welcome.
And then come back, right?
Marco, can we have a couple minutes here?